Summer 1992, I got a phone call from the leadership team of the International Church of Prague. And they were calling me because they wanted to interview me for a position of interim pastor there at their church there in Prague, Czech Republic. And we talked for probably an hour and a half, 2 hours. And then at the end of that, apparently they nodded to one another and they offered me a job. I was like, okay, wow, that was quick. I guess you're desperate. But let me think, let me pray. Sure, I'll say yes. So I kind of turned around and said yes as quickly as they offered the job. But I will, looking back, that phone call changed my life. I'd had other conversations and other moments that were very much redirecting, but I look at that one in particular, that was very much life-changing because I finished seminary, but I didn't actually know if I sensed that this is what God had for my life. Still thinking about maybe going back and getting my PhD in economics or going into banking or some consulting or doing something like that. I still wasn't sure, but when I got to the Czech Republic and I was with those people at that church, that's where I sensed, okay, this is what God has for me, and it turned on that call. And so it changed the course of my life, changed my geography, changed the friend group I was around. It changed so many things. And I don't know if maybe you've had a call like that or maybe a conversation like that, or you've heard someone speaking and there's just that moment where those words redirected your life. Well, church, Jesus is calling you. And he wants to change the course of your life. And what he's saying to you is, follow me. He's saying, follow me. Now, what does that mean? Well, fundamentally what it means is that you are willing to relinquish control of your life and let Jesus be in charge. Now, I want you to let that just sink in for a moment. You are saying, I'm not in charge of my life. Jesus, you can be in control of my life. I give you absolutely everything. Again, let that sink in for just a moment, because it's a bit frightening, isn't it? If you actually think of the seriousness of that, letting someone else run your life. And why would you do that? Jesus says, follow me because I know what's best for your life. Do you trust me? Do you trust me? And he doesn't call you just once. He calls you every single day. Follow me, follow me, follow me. So this morning what we're going to do is we're going to start our series in the Gospels. And we're going to be looking at encounters with Jesus throughout the Gospels, these moments where Jesus interacts with people and he does something, he says something, and it changes the course of their lives. And specifically, we're going to look at the call of Peter, which also folds in James and John, and how Jesus steps into Peter's life and he says, follow me, and the course of Peter's life is changed. And what we want to look at is what does that mean? Like practically, what does it mean to follow Jesus? And then why should we do it? Okay, so we're going to be in the Gospel of Luke this morning. If you're not there already, turn to Luke chapter 5. We're going to begin reading in verse 1. Luke chapter 5, verse 1. Now it happened that while the crowd was pressing around Jesus and listening to the word of God, he was standing by the lake of Gennesaret, which is the same as the Sea of Galilee, just another name for it. And he saw two boats lying at the edge of the lake, but the fishermen had gotten out of them and were washing their nets. And he got into one of the boats, which was Simon's, and asked him to put out a little way from land. And he sat down and began teaching the people from the boat. When he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, put out into the deep water and let down your nets for a catch. Simon answered and said, Master, we worked hard all night and caught nothing, but I will do as you say and let down the nets. When they had done this, they enclosed a great quantity of fish, and their nets began to break. So they signaled to their partners in the other boat for them to come and help them, and they came and filled both boats so that they began to sink. Follow me means first that you give Jesus today. You give Jesus today. Now, what's happening here in Luke chapter 5, we're in the beginning of the Gospel of Luke, and in this section, Jesus is beginning to gather followers. So he's been teaching and preaching and doing miracles, and people are beginning to follow him. He's up in Galilee because Jesus was from Galilee. That's in the north. He was from the city of Nazareth. Right now, in this section, he's in the city of Capernaum, which is just kind of just around the other side of the lake, just the north side of the lake. And this is not actually Peter's first encounter with Jesus. Apparently, Jesus had been teaching in the synagogue. And if you go to Capernaum now, you can see where the synagogue is, and you can see where tradition puts actually Peter's house, which is just right near the synagogue. And so it would seem that what happened is Jesus was preaching in the synagogue, and he healed a demoniac, and the people were like, okay, this is teaching that's got some teeth, man. This is different. This has authority. And then Jesus walks next door, and he walks into Peter's house. Chapter 4, verse 38. Then Jesus got up and left the synagogue, and he entered into Simon's home. Now Simon's mother-in-law was suffering from a high fever, and they asked him to help her. Why did they ask him to help her? Because they had already seen some of Jesus' miracles. So Jesus is in Simon Peter's house. His mother-in-law is sick, who lives with them, and he turns to Jesus and says, can you help her? I mean, you just cast out a demon. Standing over her, he rebuked the fever, and it left her, and she immediately got up and waited on them. How do you know that she's actually well? Well, she got out of bed and starts cooking. And she serves all the people who are crowding into their house. And there are more people crowding into their house because they want to be with Jesus. They want to hear more teaching. They want to be healed. Verse 40, while the sun was setting, so now we're at the end of the day. While the sun was setting, all those who had any who were sick with various diseases brought them to him in Simon Peter's house. And laying his hands on each one of them, he was healing them. Demons were also coming out of many, shouting, you are the Son of God. But rebuking them, he would not allow them to speak because they knew him to be the Christ. So Simon Peter is having this pretty crazy moment where Jesus is in his house, starts at night, and Jesus keeps healing and he keeps preaching. Verse 42, when day came, then Jesus left and went to a secluded place, and the crowds were searching for him and came to him and tried to keep him from going away from them. So he stays at Peter's house all night long. Teaching, preaching, healing. So when we see Simon Peter interacting with Jesus at the sea in the boat, it's not his first exposure. He's been listening to Jesus. He's been watching Jesus. He's starting to follow Jesus, and then he's going back to fishing, and he's following Jesus, and then he's going back to fishing. And in this moment, Jesus is about to say, enough with the fishing, follow me. Follow me. Give me your day today. Now, the details of this story are really interesting and illuminating. I want to walk back through it again. It says, it happened that while the crowd was pressing around him, right? So it's a very, it's kind of like aggressive word. They're just pushing, they're just pressing. Jesus is backing up, and he's backing up. His back is to the sea. There's a slope like this. You can go and see the area where Jesus is probably preaching there in Capernaum, but there's no more space, and people are crunching him. He's going to be pushed into the lake. And so he says, hey, can I get into your boat, Peter? And he saw two boats lying at the edge of the lake, but the fishermen had gotten out of them and were washing their nets. Why? Because they're done fishing. They're cleaning their nets because they've been trying to fish. They fished all night long and they caught nothing. So they're cleaning their nets. They're wrapping everything up. They're done for the day. They're ready to go home. They're exhausted because it's incredibly difficult physical labor for hours and hours and hours. And Jesus says, can I get into one of your boats? He says he got into one of the boats, which happened to be Simon's. And he asked him to put out a little way from land, and then he sat down and began teaching the people from the boat. So picture this, fishing all night long, caught nothing, made no money, lots of effort, no money, no fish to sell, exhausted, frustrated. Jesus says, can I get in your boat? Just go out just a little ways here from land. So Jesus just gets in the boat. Peter takes it out a little bit, and Jesus says, all right, I think I need to start preaching. You know, because this is what rabbis did. They sat down when they were going to preach. And remember, he's seen Jesus at work before. He gives very long sermons. Right? And sometimes you're probably thinking that too. Like, stand up and like wrap this thing up. Let's keep going, right? You know, you don't know. You give a preacher a microphone and it could go a long time. And Jesus has preached all night long before. He gives very long sermons. Peter's already absolutely exhausted. And Jesus sits down in his boat and he just starts going. And he probably did preach for several hours, right? But he did finally wrap it up, right? He honored the mild social contract that existed in that moment, and he finished the sermon, and then he asked for more. When he had finished speaking, he said to Simon, "Put out into the deep water and let down your nets for a catch." Notice, this is really definitive language. He doesn't say, "Let down your nets and let's see if we might catch some fish." He says, "Let down your nets for a catch. We're going to catch something." Peter's a professional fisherman. He's lived on the lake and worked on the lake his entire life. Jesus is a rabbi and he's a trained carpenter. He's not a professional fisherman. Simon has worked all night and he's caught nothing. That's when you actually catch fish. You don't catch fish when the sun is rising and the day is getting warm. This is not the time. Everything in Simon Peter's instinct says this is a really dumb idea. This is a bad idea. And Jesus says, "Let down your nets for a catch." And this is what Jesus often does with us, isn't it? He says, "I know that you want to take revenge, but I tell you, forgive. I know you're not sure if you have enough for yourself, but I want you to be generous. I know you want to be great. I want you to put on a robe and wash people's feet," right? He just says do crazy things. Follow me. Follow me. So Simon answered and he said, "Master, we worked hard all night and we caught nothing. But I will do as you say and let down the nets." Not let down the nets for a catch. I'll let down the nets and you will see we're not going to catch any fish. When they had done this, so this is probably Peter and Andrew. So that's team 1. Team 2 is James and John. When they had done this, they enclosed a great quantity of fish. How big? Well, their nets began to break. So they signaled to their partners, James and John, in the other boat for them to come and to help. And they came and filled both the boats so that they began to sink. So this is a catch unlike any other catch Peter's ever seen on the lake at any point in time. You know, they actually found one of these boats several years ago. It was buried on the Sea of Galilee. And you can go now and you can see it. They've created a little museum area to see one of these boats. It's about 30 feet long. These are substantial boats. It's a big boat, and there's so many fish that both the boats are about to sink. Peter's never seen anything like this. And this miracle of Jesus present in his life with power begins to break down the barriers in Peter's heart. Now, I will confess to you, whenever I teach a passage, I try to let it hit me first, right? Lord, what are you teaching me? I don't want to say something that I haven't allowed to impact me. And as I was reading this and thinking about it and praying and meditating, you know, I had to be honest with myself. I prefer to be in control. And I know that, but this passage just kind of lifted it out again. I like to be in control. And I can say in my mind, yeah, Jesus knows better, but kind of in my heart, I still want to grab back control because it's a frightening thing, isn't it? To let someone else be in control. Because if you follow Jesus, you're not leading. I know it sounds obvious, but you're following. You're not leading. You're not in charge. Jesus says, "Follow me." Now, the fact is, we are actually not in control of our lives. Okay? We kind of think we are sometimes, and we pretend we are, and we imagine that we are, and we want to be, but we're not. Illustration, parenting. Okay, for those of you who have ever had kids, you know, you have these moments where you realize, man, I'm not in control. I have so much more strength than my child, but I don't have control of their lives, right? There's certain things I can enforce, like through physical, but I can't control, and I put inputs into their lives and I hope for outcomes, but I don't control these outcomes. Now, I've warned you that since we have grandbaby now, I'm going to give grandchild illustrations. So here you go. Here's one. With Aurora, like you know, as a parent, you read all these books, don't you? You know, ABCs of Parenting, Parenting 1, 2, 3. You talk to wise friends and they say, all right, do these 5 steps and your kid will sleep through the night. And then they don't, right? Like, wait, well, this was a promise, that's a guarantee. They don't. Or then they sleep through the night and then they get the flu. And then they're up all night, and then they give you the flu, and then you're up all night, and everything's a mess, and all of a sudden there's just nasty everywhere, and the clothes aren't washed, and the kitchen isn't clean, and you are out of control, right? So with our grandbaby, I get to feed her sometimes, and so I like giving her avocado because it's healthy for her. And so I feed her avocado. I don't feed her chocolate. I give her avocado. Now, she probably wants chocolate more, and she probably likes chocolate better, but I give her avocado. And I tell her as I'm giving her the avocado, I said, this is good for you. Trust me. Trust me, I know better. Now you're thinking to yourself, I'm so glad you're not my grandfather. I'm glad you're not my dad. I kind of wondering if you should be my pastor because you don't like chocolate as much as you like avocado. But I know better, and I want to give her the best. Jesus says, follow me. Why? Because I know what is best for you today. Do you trust me? And so he calls you every day. And you may have some dramatic moments where you relinquish and surrender control. You may have some small moments. You may have daily moments, though, where Jesus says, let me be in control of your life. Because the fact is, you're not in control. Not in control of relationships and finances and health and career. But we follow one who is in control. Do you trust him? Do you trust him? So first, follow me means you give Jesus today. You give Jesus the present moment. Second, give Jesus your past. Verse 8. When Simon Peter saw these fish sinking the boats, he fell down at Jesus' feet, saying, go away from me, Lord, for I'm a sinful man. For amazement had seized him and all his companions because of the catch of fish which they had taken. And so also were James and John, sons of Zebedee, who were partners with Simon. They were all amazed. And Peter fell on his face. And this experience of seeing Jesus' power in his life, this is not Jesus' expertise, it's Peter's expertise. And Jesus is better than Peter is at catching fish. And he causes to catch a fish that's unlike anything Peter has ever seen drawn out of the lake, and it humbles him. Now, I don't think he necessarily understands that this is the hypostatic union working here, right? God and human flesh. Right? His theology isn't that well developed at this moment, but he realizes he's not worthy to be in this man's presence. And so he falls on his face at Jesus' feet, and he says, go away from me, Lord. I am a sinful man. And that reminds me of that moment in the book of Isaiah where in Isaiah chapter 6, chapters 1 through 5, Isaiah has been saying, woe to Edom, woe to Assyria, woe. God's judgment is coming on you because you're sinful people, you're a sinner, you're a sinner, you're a sinner, woe, woe, woe. Right, that's the first 5 chapters. It's kind of depressing. And then he hits Isaiah chapter 6, and he's drawn in by vision into the very throne room of God, and he sees the glory and beauty and power and majesty and holiness of God, and the angels are crying out, holy, 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 absolutely morally pure is Yahweh, the creator of the universe. And Isaiah says, woe is me. Uh-oh. Because I'm a man of unclean lips. I live among a people of unclean lips. For my eyes have seen the Lord of hosts, the King of kings, one who commands heavenly armies. Holy, holy, holy is he. Woe is me. But in that moment of truth and reality and humility, and he's on his face, the angel takes a coal from the altar of the Lord and touches his lips and cleanses him. Says, you're cleansed. Your sin is forgiven. It's dealt with. Peter's exactly where he needs to be, exactly where Jesus needs him to be. He's facing reality that he does have guilt in his past. He says, depart from me, I'm a sinful man. Truth. Truth. But Jesus will turn to him and then say, don't be afraid. Why? Because Jesus knows that he will deal with Peter's past. Now, your adversary, the devil, your enemy, wants to cover you up with guilt and shame so that you don't rush to Jesus to be healed. Because you do have a debt of sin. You are carrying a load, a burden. And some of you may even walked in here this morning and you're feeling it really heavy. That's why Jesus died. That's the point of the gospel. And you can walk out of here with a genuine sense of freedom because Jesus has dealt with your past. As far as the east is from the west, meaning there's no connection between the two. So far as he removed our sin from us because of what Jesus has done on the cross. I love it that Trey picked that song that he chose to open up this text for us. All sufficient merit is given to us. We deserve nothing. We've earned nothing. But we can say to Jesus, thank you. That's what faith is. Faith is saying, thank you, Jesus. I receive the gift. I receive the gift of my debt being paid for by you so I don't have to pay for it. Thank you. Thank you. No more debt I owe. No more shame, no more guilt, instead perfect freedom. Now I'd encourage you, if you've never had that moment, you personally, maybe you've heard the idea, Jesus died for sins and he died on the cross to pay for sins, but he died for your sins. If you haven't had that moment where you personally said, Jesus, thank you for dying for my sins, I accept. Let me encourage you to do that this morning. You can walk out of here knowing your debt has been paid. Done. Freedom. Freedom. And who's that available to? Well, in Revelation chapter 22, it says this, the Spirit and the bride say, come. And let the one who hears say, come. And let the one who is thirsty, come. Let the one who desires take the water of life without cost. Who is welcome to take this water of life? Anybody who wants it. Do you want it? Now, having taken it once the first time and said, Jesus, thank you, Satan will continue to try to come back and whisper in your ear about your guilt and shame. And what do? You go back to the cross. Say, paid in full. Paid in full. Shut it. Paid in full. No more debt I owe. Paid in full. Give him your past. Tom Constable wrote a wonderful commentary on the book of Luke. In his notes, he wrote, Jesus does not depart from nor reject sinners who feel conviction because of their sin. He draws them to himself, and then he sends them out to serve. So, first, give him today. Give him your present. Second, give him your past and all the shame and guilt because Jesus has paid for it. And then third, give him your future. Verse 10, second half of verse 10, he says to Simon Peter, do not fear. From now on, you will be catching men. When they had brought their boats to land, they left everything and they followed Jesus. From another commentary, Darrell Bach, he wrote, what Peter does not realize is that admitting one's inability in sin is the best prerequisite for service, since then one can depend on God. Peter's confession becomes his resume for service. Humility is the elevator to spiritual greatness. Jesus said to him, don't be afraid. I mean, it's appropriate that you be afraid, but don't stay afraid, right? Yes, you have a debt and it's separating you, but I'm going to take care of that. I'm going to deal with that on the cross. So what I want to do is I want to redirect your life. And there's nothing wrong with fishing, Peter. It's an honorable profession. It's hard work. You provided for your family, but I have something more for you. Now what I want you to do is I want you to fish for men. Right? And Jesus is such a master, right, at just grabbing the metaphor. And where does he meet Peter? By the sea, in the boat. He doesn't even call him while he's in the synagogue in a church service. It's right where he lives, right? And that's what he does with us. He meets you in your dorm room, at home, when you're caring for your kids, when you're at work with your coworkers, when you're driving to soccer practice, when you're going to the grocery store. He says, right here, right now, follow me. And let me be in charge of your life, and let me take you where I want you to go, and let me imbue your every single day with purpose, fishing for men. That is, you're called so that you can call others. Because what people need more than they need anything else in their lives is that they need forgiveness of sins and they need a reason and a purpose to live. And only Jesus can give them that. Right? Only Jesus. There's another calling that occurs right after this, chapter 5, verse 27. It says, after that, Jesus went out and noticed a tax collector named Levi, or Matthew, that's one of his other names, sitting in the tax booth, and he said to him, follow me. And he left everything behind and got up to follow him. Now again, this isn't Matthew's first exposure, right? He's in Galilee, he's in Capernaum right now. Matthew has probably heard him in the synagogue. He has seen him doing miracles. It's not his first moment, but Jesus is walking by the tax booth and he says, right here, right now, you, follow me. And remember, Matthew had probably already reconciled himself to the fact, my countrymen are not going to like me, and my friends and family are not going to like me because I'm going to take a job working for the Romans and collecting tax. I'm going to be that guy. I'm the IRS of the ancient Near East. I'm going to take their money, and I'm going to extort their money, and I'm going to take extra for myself, but I'm going to get rich, and I think I'm okay with that trade-off. And so he's already reconciled himself to that fact, so he doesn't have his normal group of friends and family around him any longer, but he's got the outcasts. And Jesus goes to Matthew and he says, follow me. Now, he left everything. Why did he left his wealth and his career? He left everything. Peter left his fishing boat, his career, his vocation, everything. You know, why did they leave everything? Because they were hungry. They were thirsty. They were looking for more. They wanted more out of life than they could find on their own. So when Jesus said, follow me, they said, done. Done. I will leave everything behind and I will follow you. Now, what holds you back? Well, what holds me back is, in a sense, the fear of the unknown. What's it look like if I turn over my entire life to Jesus? I don't know. I don't know what it's going to look like for you. I don't know what it's going to look like for me because you're not in charge and I'm not in charge. We're just saying yes. We'll let Jesus take us wherever he wants us to go. I'm going to say yes to him today. I'm going to say thank you for the freedom from the past. I'm going to say yes tomorrow and every single day because I trust that he knows what's best. Do you trust him? Are you willing to say yes when Jesus says, follow me? Now, my wife, Tristy, she started following Jesus when she was about 19 years old. And obviously, this is before we were married. She's 19 years old. Her maiden name was Whelpley, so it's Tristy Leanne Whelpley, which you're saying to yourself, oh, you rescued her. All right, it's Tristy Fisher. Hopefully my in-laws are not watching. So Tristy Leanne Whelpley, she started following Jesus, and she decided she wanted to get baptized. She wanted to publicly proclaim, I'm a follower of Jesus Christ. So she went in, did her baptism interview, got all set up to be baptized on Sunday morning. She didn't know the pastor well who was baptizing her, so when it came her time to get baptized, she went down into the water, and the pastor said, in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, I baptize you, my sister in Christ, Christy Whitley. Right? So she's going down, and she's like, wait, that's not my name. Right? There you go, up and out. You're buried to the Christ, raised to new life. Go on your way, Christy Whitley. Right? So we have this joke around our house, right, that someday, we're walking up to the pearly gates, and there's Peter. He's got his list. And she goes, Tristy Fisher. He goes, no, I don't see Tristy Fisher. She goes, well, Tristy Whelpley. Tristy Leanne Whelpley. No, I don't see that. She goes, Christy Whitley. He goes, all right, come on in. There you go. Christy, I got you right there. Jesus knows your name. And he makes no mistakes. And he's calling you and he's saying, follow me. Entrust your entire life to me. I've got you.